I saw it myself. I was standing right there in the medical bay, trying to look busy with a datapad, but honestly, I couldn't take my eyes off them. High Preceptor Kalen Vross, the pride of the Xylian Iron Legion, sat on the edge of the biobed, looking like his entire worldview had just shattered into a million glittering pieces. He reached out slowly, hesitantly, and wrapped his long violet fingers around Commander Rain's wrist. It wasn't a capture, it was a question. I remember the way he looked at her. It wasn't with the arrogance he'd worn like armor for years. It was sheer, terrified awe. He pressed his thumb against the pulse point of her inner arm, feeling the heavy, rhythmic thud of a heart that had to pump blood through veins meant to withstand atmospheric, crushing depths. The heat radiating off her skin distorted the air between them, smelling faintly of ozone and burned circuitry. "We thought you were fragile," Ross whispered, his voice cracking. "We thought the suits were keeping you alive." Rain didn't pull away. She just watched him, her eyes tired but burning with that terrifying Terran intensity. "The suits were keeping you safe, Kalen," she said softly. "Truth is, I don't think they even noticed me standing there. But before that quiet moment, oh, there was the noise." 3 days earlier, the Obsidian Spire was buzzing. When the Terran delegation arrived for the joint combat drill, the Iron Legion openly laughed. I mean, can you blame them? The Xylians are elegant, tall, silver-skinned, moving with a fluid grace that makes gravity look like a suggestion. Then the humans clanked off their transport. They looked like walking tanks. Huge, bulky, pressurized exoskeletons hissing with pneumatics. Preceptor Vross stood at the head of the arena, arms crossed, smirking at what he called life support coffins. He genuinely believed the humans were too weak to handle the Spire's standard atmosphere without mechanical help. "When gravity is a weapon," Vross had announced to his troops, his voice amplified across the arena, "ensure your enemy wasn't born in it." The drill was supposed to be simple, hand-to-hand combat, variable gravity. Vross wanted to humiliate them. I was in the control booth, watching the readouts. He signaled the techs to crank the artificial gravity. 1.5 Gs. The Xylians moved faster, lighter. The humans plodded, their servos whining. 2.5 Gs. Vross was dancing circles around Rain's mech, landing strikes on her armor that rang like bells. He was showing off. The Xylian elites were laughing, banking on the fact that biology always fails before machinery. Then Vross got reckless. He signaled for 4 Gs. The air in the arena shimmered. I felt the floor vibration all the way up in the booth. The Xylians started to struggle, their elegant movements turning jerky, their bones straining under the sudden weight. Ross fell to one knee, gasping, sweat slicking his silver hair. He looked up, expecting to see the humans crushed inside their tin cans, flattened by the pressure. But the Terran commander, she just stopped. She stood there, surrounded by Xylians who were passing out from the G-force. The whining of her suit's servos changed pitch. It wasn't straining to lift her anymore. It sounded like it was unlocking. I saw Rain reach up and grab the helmet release. Ross's eyes went wide. He tried to shout, to tell her not to break the seal, that the pressure would kill her instantly. "System disengaged," the automated voice boomed through the arena speakers. Steam vented violently from the suit's joints, not life support gas, but coolant. The heavy plating on Rain's shoulders hissed and popped open, sliding off and hitting the floor with a crater-cracking thud. She stepped out. She wasn't wearing an undersuit. She was wearing a tank top, and she didn't collapse. She stretched, her joints popping, standing comfortably in a gravity well that was crushing the strongest Xylian warriors into the floor. You have to understand the sound was the worst part, or maybe the best part, depending on whose side you were on. It wasn't a roar of victory. It was just the heavy, rhythmic clump, clump, clump of Commander Rain's combat boots hitting the deck. I stood there in the booth, hands pressed against the glass, watching the impossible. The gravity readouts were screaming red levels that should have turned human bones into powder. But Rain, she just walked. She didn't sprint. She didn't dance like the Xylians. She moved with this terrifying, predatory solidity. Ross was on his hands and knees, drool stringing from his lips, his silver skin flushing a bruised purple. He tried to look up, to find an enemy to fight. but all he found was a hand. Rain reached down. "Get up," she said. Her voice wasn't amplified by the suit anymore. It was just her. Raw, human. I saw Ross flinch. He expected to be crushed. He expected the end. Instead, Rain grabbed his combat harness and hauled him upright. And look, I've seen Ross lift heavy ordnance. I've seen him tear bulkheads open. But Rain lifted him like he was made of paper. She took all that Xylian elegance, all that height, and supported his entire weight with one arm. "Cut the gravity," she barked at the booth. I scrambled for the controls, my fingers slipping on the console, slamming the kill switch. The hum died. The air cleared. Ross slumped against her, gasping, his legs trembling as the pressure normalized. He stared at her bare arms, dense muscle, thick bone, scarred skin, and then at the discarded mech suit lying in a heap. "The exoskeleton," Ross wheezed, his pride bleeding out on the floor. "It wasn't protecting you from the planet." Rain looked him dead in the eye, and I swear the temperature in the room dropped. "No, High Preceptor. It was protecting the planet from us." Fast forward 2 hours. That brings us back to the med bay. Back to that moment I told you about, where he was holding her wrist like it was a holy relic. The tension in the room had shifted. It wasn't hostile anymore. It was intimate. The kind of intimacy that comes after you realize how close you came to dying. Rain handed him a steaming cup. It smelled acrid, bitter Terran coffee. To a Xylian, the caffeine content is basically a mild neurotoxin, enough to make their hearts race for a week. Ross took it anyway. "Our world is heavy," Rain explained quietly, sitting on a crate opposite him. "High gravity, volatile weather. We didn't evolve to flow with the wind, Kalen. We evolved to stand against it. We condense, we harden." Ross took a sip, grimaced, but didn't put it down. He looked at the cup, then back at her. "We judged the shell," he murmured, "and missed the soldier." He reached out again, brushing his thumb over the knuckles of her hand, the hand that had pulled him up from the floor. I saw a smile touch the corner of his mouth. It was small, humble, a leader acknowledging a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. "Next time," Ross said, raising the toxic cup in a toast, his violet eyes locking onto hers. "We skip the gravity. We just arm wrestle." Rain laughed. It was a good sound. "Deal. But drink that slowly, Preceptor. I don't want to have to carry you again." Truth is, looking at the way he leaned into her space, I don't think he would have minded that at all.